The wealthy businessman was putting up posters in the street, desperate for the slightest clue about his vanished son, when a little girl slowly approached, looking at the photo, as if seeing a ghost. "Sir, that boy lives at my house," she said in a quiet voice. What the man would discover next would make his entire world collapse in an instant. Henry had always been the kind of man who seemed to have the world in his hands. An empire built with sweat and ambition, companies featured in magazines, luxurious trips, a stately home that exuded power. But all that turned to dust the moment Leo, his only son, disappeared without a sound, without a trace, without a goodbye. 1 year, 365 days of hell. Since then, the millionaire had become a broken man, a body that walked while his soul dragged itself along. What good is gold when what I love has turned to wind? He asked himself every morning, gazing at the child's empty bed. The echo of silence accompanied him like an unending sentence. That morning, the sun seemed to mock him, peeking between the buildings as if the world remained intact. Henry put on his usual creased blazer, the same one that had long lost the scent of expensive cologne and now smelled of exhaustion. In the back seat of his car, dozens of folded flyers, each bearing the smiling face of the boy he so desperately sought. "Today I'll go further," he murmured, starting the engine with a knot in his chest. He drove towards the inner city estates where the streets were narrow, the brickwork crumbling, and life seemed harder. There, no one recognized him. There, the millionaire was nothing more than a ruined father. The potholed asphalt made his car tremble, and he felt the bitter taste of defeat as he got out, a bundle of flyers in his hands. He walked slowly, stumbling over his own memories. Every grimy wall seemed to mock his helplessness. He stopped in front of a rusty lamppost, took a deep breath, and taped up another sheet. The tape didn't stick well, and he tried to straighten it, like someone trying to mend their own life. "Please, someone must know about you, my son," he whispered. His hands trembled, and the sound of the tape tearing mingled with the rustle of the trees. In that moment, he seemed as alone as the wind around him. Suddenly, a curious little voice resonated behind him. "Sir, that boy lives at my house." Henry froze. His heart, which until then had beaten wearily, seemed to leap within his chest. He turned slowly and saw a little girl standing on the pavement, barefoot, in a worn dress, her eyes too big for her age. What did you say?" he asked, his voice choked. The little one pointed at the poster with her tiny finger and completed, with disarming sweetness, "That boy lives with my mum and me." Henry felt the ground slip from beneath his feet. For a moment, he thought he was hallucinating. He knelt in front of the girl, trying to contain the tremor in his hands. "Are you sure about that, this boy here?" His voice was a mixture of desperation and hope. The girl nodded without hesitation, her eyes fixed on the poster. "Yes, sir. He's quiet. He draws a lot and cries at night. Sometimes he talks in his sleep. He calls someone a name." Henry held his breath. "What name?" he asked. Barely audible. "Daddy," the innocent girl replied, not understanding the weight of that word. Time stood still. Henry took a step back as if he'd been punched in the chest. Images of Leo playing in the garden, the drawings on the walls, the laughter that filled the hallways, it all came flooding back. "Oh my God," he murmured, burying his face in his hands. "Do you live far from here?" he asked, trying to suppress his tears. "No, it's just around the corner," she smiled shyly, like someone who had just revealed a secret. Henry didn't know whether to believe her, run, or collapse right there. The world spun around this girl who looked at him with tenderness and truth. He took a deep breath and ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Can you take me there?" he asked, his voice trembling. The girl frowned thoughtfully and replied, "Yes, I can, but Mum might get cross." Henry leaned in, his eyes full of tears. "Don't worry, I just want to see if it's him, nothing more." She hesitated for an instant, then nodded, and her gaze reflected an innocent bravery that deeply moved him. As she began to walk, the wind stirred the freshly pasted poster. Leo's face smiled under the faint glow of the light. For the first time in a long time, Henry felt hope breathe again. Little Alice walked ahead, barefoot, with light, steady steps, while Henry followed a few meters behind, dominated by a mixture of fear and hope. His heart beat like a frantic drum. Each beat seemed to echo in the silent alleyways of that forgotten neighborhood. The houses were modest, with cracked walls and makeshift gates. In the distance, dogs barked, and the smell of cheap food wafted from the windows. Henry, accustomed to marble hallways and fine perfumes, felt out of place, almost an intruder. But nothing mattered. If what the girl had said was true, he would trade 1,000 lives for that reunion. So, Does he talk about me sometimes? He asked, trying to disguise the tremor in his voice. Alice turned over her shoulder with a shy smile. Sometimes he does. He talks about a park, a red swing, and a black car that made a lot of noise. Henry paused for a second, his face paling. The red swing, he murmured. It was the same one in the garden of the house where Leo disappeared. A shiver ran down his body, and he felt his eyes fill with tears. Oh my God, it's him. It has to be him. The girl didn't fully understand the magnitude of it all, but observed him with curiosity and a certain affection. There was something in her eyes he had never seen before, faith. As they walked, Henry tried to suppress the urge to run. And how did your mum find him? He asked hesitantly. Alice thought for a moment. Mum said he just appeared one rainy day. She took him home because he was cold and hungry. The childlike voice was pure, but each word resonated with weight in the man's memory. He clenched his fists, imagining his lost son, drenched, crying for help. And he never tried to find his parents? He insisted. The girl shook her head. He said he didn't have anyone anymore, that God sent him to us. Henry looked away, holding back tears. God. Or fate, he thought, with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. The path became narrower, the streets darker. At each corner, Henry felt his stomach clench. He looked around, trying to remember every detail, as if the surroundings could give him clues. The girl pointed to a small house with peeling blue window frames. It's there, she said innocently. Henry stopped for a moment and took a deep breath. His legs trembled, and the air seemed scarce. His heart hammered in his throat. Leo, if it's you, he murmured. Alice, noticing his nervousness, took his hand. It's gonna be all right, mister, I promise. That simple gesture, born from a child's heart, held him by a thread. When Alice pushed open the gate, the sharp squeal cut through the silence of the alley. Claire, her mother, was in the living room. Her gaze met Henry's, and for a second, the world seemed to freeze. The woman's eyes widened, and her forced smile betrayed a deep fear. Good afternoon, Henry said, his voice controlled, almost cold. I believe my son might be here. Claire remained motionless. Then she let out a nervous laugh. Your son? You're mistaken, sir. Alice, confused, intervened. But Mum, it's the boy. Before she could finish, her mother turned sharply, with a look that chilled the little girl's blood. Alice, get inside now. Henry took a step forward. Please, I just want to see him. I just need to look into his eyes. If I'm wrong, I'll leave. Claire crossed her arms, breathing heavily. There's no child here. Go away. The tension grew with each word. The girl, on the verge of tears, looked at both of them without understanding. Mum, I'm not lying. The boy lives here, I swear it. Claire pushed her inside forcefully, shouting, Shut up, Alice. The voice echoed through the house. Henry stood still, overwhelmed by indignation and pain. In that instant, he recognized in her the look of someone hiding something, a heavy, dark secret. Why are you lying? He asked, his eyes wet. What are you hiding? Claire maintained a firm tone, but sweat beaded on her forehead. Don't invent stories, sir. Go mind your own business. Henry stepped back, his throat tight. The girl was crying behind the half-open door, whispering, I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. Before he could say anything, Claire advanced and slammed the door shut, the bang echoing down the alley. Henry stood there, motionless, staring at the closed wood in front of him. His chest heaved with desperation, and he murmured to himself, She's lying, she's hiding my son. With eyes full of tears and a shattered heart, Henry took a few steps back, still hearing the girl's sobs on the other side of the door. The wind blew fiercely, and the poster he held in his hand flew away down the narrow street. He caught it with difficulty, and as he looked at Leo's photo again, a vow was born within him. I will come back, even if it costs me my life. On the other side, Alice, trembling, held the same poster he had dropped. Her eyes, filled with tears, reflected something new. For the first time, she began to doubt her own mother. The sound of the door closing still echoed in Alice's head as she ran up the stairs, her heart pounding. Tears blurred her face, and her breath came in gasps. She pushed open the bedroom door, and inside, the silence was too heavy. Gloom covered the small space, and the only light came from a broken window where the wind made the torn curtains dance. It was then that she saw him. Leo, sitting in a corner with a notebook on his lap and frightened eyes, looked up. The boy seemed frail, thin, with disheveled hair and pencil-stained hands. Alice, he murmured doubtfully, like someone afraid of being discovered. Leo, she exclaimed in a loud whisper. running towards him. The hug was instantaneous, desperate. "It's all right, I promise," the boy said, trying to comfort her without understanding her tears. "Mom got angry with that man downstairs," Alice replied, sobbing. Leo lowered his head, pressing the notebook against his chest. "I heard him shout my name, and then she told me to come here and not make a sound." The fear in his voice cut through the air. "But Leo, that man knows you. He said he's your daddy." The boy's eyes widened, and for a second, silence seemed to swallow the room. "My daddy," he repeated in a trembling voice. "I dreamt about him last night. I dreamt he called my name and said he was coming for me." A shiver ran down Alice's spine. So, it was true, she thought aloud, taking his hands. Leo shook his head, confused. "Mum said my daddy died, that no one else would want me." The words hurt, though he didn't fully understand them. Alice pressed her lips together, trying to distinguish between lie and truth. "She sometimes lies," she said quietly, looking at the door. "But why would you lie about that?" The question hung in the air like a ghost no one wanted to look at. The sound of Claire's footsteps coming up the stairs made them look at each other, terrified. "Quick, lie down," Alice whispered, pulling Leo towards the bed. He covered himself, pretending to sleep. The handle slowly turned, and the woman entered with a forced smile. "My darlings, what was all that fuss about?" Her voice sounded too sweet to be sincere. Alice wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Nothing, Mum, just a nightmare." Claire came closer, stroked her daughter's hair, and glanced at Leo. "All right, love?" she asked in a theatrical tone. The boy pretended to wake up, murmuring, "Yes, Mum," almost inaudibly. "Good," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I don't want any more trouble, understood? That man is dangerous. Promise me you won't talk to him." Alice felt her heart clench, but he seemed nice. "Mum, he was really crying." Claire knelt and held the girl's face firmly. "There are things you don't understand yet, my love. The world is cruel. Sometimes people pretend to be good." Her eyes shone, not with emotion, but with fear. It was as if she held within her a secret capable of destroying everything. "Now go to sleep. Yes, tomorrow will be a new day." When Claire left and closed the door, the silence became thick, suffocating. Alice turned to Leo, her gaze fixed on the shadow that covered half his face. "Do you believe what she said?" the boy asked. He hesitated, drawing something in the air with his finger. "She saved me, but she also hid me. I don't know what's right." The girl took a deep breath, holding back tears. "I think she's lying, Leo. I feel it right here." She touched her chest. There was something pure in that gesture. A child's intuition stronger than 1,000 proofs. For the first time, Alice didn't recognize the woman she called Mum. Night fell heavily on the small room, and the distant sound of sirens mingled with the stifled sobs of the two children. Alice stayed awake, watching Leo sleep, trying to understand why someone would hide a child like this. Outside, the wind rattled the broken window, and she whispered to herself, "I'm going to find out what's happening, even if I lose everything." The following days dragged on like a never-ending nightmare. Alice no longer saw her mother in the same way. Every smile seemed fake, every caress sounded calculated. She watched her in silence, paying attention to everything. The whispered calls, the hidden papers, the tense glances. Claire cast out the window. At night, when the house was in shadow, the girl heard her mother walking back and forth, opening and closing drawers, as if trying to hide something that shouldn't be seen. Leo, quiet, seemed to feel the same unease. "Why is she always scared?" he whispered one night. Alice replied in a low voice, "Because she lied to someone, and when you lie, fear never sleeps." That morning, Claire left in a hurry, her bag slung over her shoulder, her eyes full of worry. "I'm going to the shop." "Stay calm and don't touch anything," she said before closing the door. The sound of the lock clicking was the signal Alice had been waiting for. Her heart raced, her hands sweated. "She's hiding something, Leo. I have to know what it is." The boy, frightened, tried to stop her. "If she finds out, she'll be angry with you." Alice took a deep breath. "I can handle that, but I can't live with lies anymore." Then she began to search, opening wardrobes, lifting rugs, checking corners she had never noticed. Her mother's room smelled of perfume mixed with mold and guilt. The curtains blocked almost all the light, leaving the atmosphere gloomy. In one corner, a floorboard was loose, a small detail, but enough to pique the curiosity of an observant child. Alice knelt, slipped her fingers into the crack, and carefully lifted the wood, revealing a dark, dusty space. Inside was an old notebook with a torn cover, wrapped in a faded handkerchief. She carefully took it out, as if holding something sacred and forbidden at the same time. "What is this?" she murmured. Leo approached hesitantly, his gaze fixed on those yellowed pages. When she opened the notebook, a shiver ran down her body. Pages full of notes, names, dates, figures, scribbled alongside. "What a strange thing," she murmured, frowning. It didn't look like a diary or a shopping list. The letters were quick, nervous, as if written in a hurry. She ran her finger over a blurred name and continued to flip through, trying to understand. Why would she hide this? She wondered more to herself than to Leo. The boy, confused, just watched. There was something dark in that notebook, something that made the air in the room heavier, as if the words had a life of their own, until among so many meaningless lines, something caught her attention. A name, Leo H. The girl's heart stopped for an instant. She looked at the boy beside her and then at the paper. "Look, your name is here." Her voice came out trembling, between surprise and fear. Leo leaned closer, his eyes wide. "My name? Why?" Alice shook her head, not knowing what to say. "I don't know, but this isn't normal. Why would Mum write that?" The silence that followed was suffocating. The letters of the name seemed to glow in the dim light, like an impossible-to-ignore sign. The girl's heart felt like it was about to burst. Everything spun around her. Fear mingled with confusion. "There's something wrong, Leo. I feel it," she whispered. He looked at her, uneasy, not understanding. "What are we going to do?" he asked. Alice closed the notebook tightly, as if to silence the secrets held within. "We have to find that man. He'll know what this means." There was uncertainty in her voice, but also a new kind of courage, born from the need to discover the truth. Although she didn't fully understand what the notebook represented, she knew it was the key to something much bigger. With trembling hands, she tore a page from the notebook and copied everything she could. Leo's name, the nearby dates, and the details she remembered. The sound of the pencil scratching the paper was like thunder in the silence of the house. Leo watched her silently, his eyes full of tears. "If she comes back and finds you," Alice interrupted him. "She won't find me. We have to try." When she finished, she put the sheet in her dress pocket and placed the notebook back in its hiding place, covering it with the board. Her breathing was short, her heart pounding in her chest. "Come on, Leo, I have to find him now." As she opened the door, the afternoon sun blinded her for an instant. The warm wind hit her face, drying the tears that still fell. She looked at the sky and, for the first time, felt something akin to destiny. "I'm going to find him," she told Leo, squeezing his hand, "even if I get lost forever." The sun began to dip behind the rooftops as Alice ran without looking back. The warm air caught in her throat, and her heart beat to the rhythm of each step. The folded sheet in her pocket scraped against her skin as if the paper had a life of its own, pulsing with her fear. Leo had stayed behind, watching her from the window with a lost gaze and trembling hands. "Be careful," he murmured, unsure if she could hear him. But the girl didn't stop. There was an urgency within her, an impulse she didn't even understand. All she knew was that she had to find that man with sad eyes, the man who cried for the boy on the poster. The neighborhood seemed bigger than before, the streets endless. Alice stumbled, got up, and kept going. At every corner, she asked strangers if they knew where the man with the black car lived. Many just shook their heads. Others looked at her with pity. Time seemed to mock her, dragging the minutes as if wanting to test her. When night finally began to fall, an old man sweeping the pavement pointed the way. "The stately home at the end of the avenue. That man lives there. The one who puts up posters." Alice thanked him and ran, her heart so loud it seemed to fill the silence of the streets. Henry's mansion appeared ahead, imposing and sad at the same time. The yellow lights of the facade reflected in the iron gate, and the air smelled of loneliness. Alice stopped, hesitating for an instant. What if he doesn't believe me? Fear almost made her retreat, but the thought of Leo and that name written in the notebook gave her strength. She pressed the doorbell once, twice, 3 times. A man in a dark suit appeared and looked her up and down. "What are you doing here alone at this hour, child?" The little girl took a deep breath. "I need to see the owner of the house. It's important. It's about his son." The butler hesitated, but there was something so sincere in her gaze that he finally opened the gate. When Henry entered the living room, his face bore the exhaustion of someone who had lived a year between desperation and hope. Seeing the girl, it took him a second to recognize her. "You're the girl from the poster?" Alice nodded, her eyes full of tears. "Sir, I found something." With trembling hands, she pulled the crumpled paper from her pocket. "This was hidden in Mum's room. I don't understand what it means, but his name is here. Henry took the sheet, and seeing Leo's name written there, he felt the world spin. The letters seemed to move under his blurred vision. Where did you find this? He asked, his voice breaking. In an old notebook under the floorboards, she replied, crying. I swear I'm not lying, I just felt I had to show you. Henry sat down, pressing the paper against his chest. Those notes, names, dates, figures, formed a sinister pattern. This is too serious. His hands trembled. He recognized 2 names from among the missing children posters he had put up months ago. The pain transformed into rage, and the rage into fear. She's involved in this, he murmured, almost voiceless. Alice looked at him, confused. What do you mean? He hesitated before replying. It means your mother might be caught up in something terrible. Tears streamed down the girl's face. No, she can't be bad. Her voice came out in sobs, like a plea denying reality. Henry approached and took her small hands in his. Listen, my dear, sometimes evil doesn't wear a monster's mask. Sometimes it disguises itself as love. His gaze was gentle but laden with profound sadness. The important thing is that you were brave. You saved my son, and you can save many other children too. Alice shook her head, not fully understanding. I just wanted her to be good, she said softly. I know, my child. I also wish the world was fair, he replied, his voice choked. A heavy silence filled the room. Outside, the wind blew, gently rustling the curtains. Henry stood up, wiped his face, and looked at Leo's portrait hanging on the wall. Where is he now? He asked. At my house, in the room. She told him to hide. The girl's voice was both a confession and a plea for help. Henry took a deep breath, picked up the phone, and made a quick call with a firm voice he hadn't had in a long time. Prepare the car, we're going now. Alice watched him with a mixture of admiration and fear, not knowing what would happen next, but feeling deep down that nothing would ever be the same. He knelt in front of her and said tenderly, You did the right thing, little one. Now leave it to me. I promise no one will hurt you again. Alice, crying, hugged him tightly, a pure embrace from someone who gives the world to a stranger and, at the same time, unknowingly finds a new home. Henry closed his eyes, and for an instant, felt destiny align. Let's go get my son, he whispered, and when he stood up, something in his gaze had changed. It was no longer that of a broken man, but of a father willing to face hell for the life of the child who still awaited him. Night fell over the city like a thick veil, concealing secrets and setting the stage for something no one could foresee. Henry's car cut through the streets, its headlights piercing the darkness, and the sound of the engine seemed like the echo of a racing heart. In the passenger seat, Alice clutched the piece of paper between her fingers, staring into space with tear-filled eyes. Is everything going to be all right? She asked in a trembling voice. Henry looked at her with tenderness and determination. Yes, I promise you. The words came out firm. But in his chest, a mixture of fear and hope burned. Between the love and the anger that grew with each mile traveled, the car stopped a few streets from the house. Henry turned off the engine, took a deep breath, and looked around. We're going in quietly, all right? He said in a low voice. The girl nodded, holding her breath. The night air was heavy, as if even the wind awaited what was about to happen. They crossed the rusty gate, walking carefully over the damp ground, and the distant bark of a dog made the moment seem even more tense. The house was almost dark. Only a faint light escaped from the bedroom window. Henry stopped, closed his eyes for an instant, and whispered, Please, let me find him. Just one more time, they entered through the back door. The creak of the hinges echoed, and Alice put a finger to her lips, asking for silence. The hallway was narrow, and the smell of mold and old food permeated the air. With each step, Henry's heart beat harder. It's there, the girl whispered, pointing to the bedroom door. He approached, his hands trembling, and slowly turned the knob. The room was in shadow, and for an instant, time seemed to stop. On the bed, a child slept curled up, his face half covered by a torn sheet. Henry took a hesitant step forward, as if afraid to wake from a dream. Leo, he murmured. The boy slowly opened his eyes, confused, blinking at the approaching figure. Son, it's me, Henry said, his voice breaking. Leo looked at him for a second, and then something shone in his eyes. Recognition. Daddy, he whispered, barely audible. Henry fell to his knees, tears streaming uncontrollably. Oh my God, my son. He hugged him tightly, like someone afraid that time would snatch him away again. Their tears mingled, and even Alice cried, standing with her hands over her chest. I knew it was him, she murmured, smiling through her tears. But the moment of relief was short-lived. A noise in the living room made them freeze. Heavy, loud footsteps. The sound of a key turning in the lock. Henry signaled to Alice to hide behind him and embraced Leo. The front door burst open, and Claire's voice resonated, cold and sharp. Alice. Silence was the only reply. Seconds later, another masculine voice, deep, menacing, boomed through the house. Someone's here! The air seemed to vanish. Henry looked around desperately, trying to think fast. Alice tugged his arm, trembling. It's the man who always comes to see Mum, she whispered. Henry understood immediately. That was the accomplice. The bedroom door burst open, and Claire appeared, her eyes blazing. What do you think you're doing here? She shrieked, her voice a mix of fury and desperation. Alice stepped forward. Mum, what's happening? Why did that man come? And why was his name in your notebook? Silence fell immediately. Claire took a deep breath, her gaze wavering between her daughter and Henry. You want to know? Then you're going to hear everything. Her voice came out firm, charged with something between guilt and cynicism. I work with people who take children. Sometimes we sell them, other times we ask for money for them, but Leo, I couldn't give him away. The air became dense. Henry went pale, and Alice put her hands to her mouth, unable to believe what she was hearing. Mum, are you lying? The girl stammered, her voice broken. Claire slowly shook her head. No, daughter, it's the truth. He was just one more, another case. But when I saw him so small, so lost, I couldn't do it. I brought him home. He became part of us. Henry took a step forward, overcome by horror and rage. You kidnapped him. You destroyed my life. Claire looked at him, her eyes tearful but cold. And what do you know about losing? You have everything, and still you lost him because you trusted too much. Alice cried uncontrollably. Mum, why did you do that? Why with him? The woman tried to reach out and touch her daughter's face, but Alice recoiled. Because I had no other option, Claire murmured. The people I work with don't forgive. And when he appeared, I saw an opportunity to start over, to have a real family. Henry shouted, his voice breaking the silence. You call that love? You stole a child, and now you try to justify it with feelings. Claire closed her eyes, her voice trembling. I loved that child more than anything, and still, I know that love doesn't erase what I did. The man behind her stepped forward impatiently. Enough drama. Let's get this over with. Alice grabbed her mother's arm desperately. Don't let him hurt us. Please. Claire took a deep breath, her face tense, her gaze lost between her daughter and the accomplice. There's no turning back now, my love, she said in a low voice. Henry, with Leo in his arms, trembled between rage and compassion. You could have asked for help. You could have told the truth, he said, his voice choked. Claire averted her gaze, murmuring, The truth never saved me from anything, Henry. It only condemned me. The silence that followed seemed to scream. Alice, filled with horror, recoiled a step, feeling her legs give way. Claire was crying now, but there was no innocence in her tears. I just wanted a child, she whispered. I just wanted to love someone who wouldn't leave me. Henry looked at her with deep sadness. And for that, you destroyed families. Her gaze hardened again, an armor of guilt and desperation. Don't try to understand what I did. Claire's scream broke the heavy air of the house. Get out now. She pushed Alice and Leo with force, her voice trembling and her eyes overflowing with desperation. You don't want to see this. The children stumbled in the hallway, crying, not understanding, while their mother slammed the door shut and bolted it from inside. On the other side, the sound of rapid footsteps and moving furniture filled the air with panic. Alice clung to her heart-brother, her face covered in tears. Leo, what's he going to do? He, pale, squeezed her hands. We have to help, Dad. The girl's breath caught in sobs. But what if it's too late? Inside the room, Henry tried to keep his voice firm. Claire, please, listen to me. It doesn't have to end like this. The woman trembled, tears streaming uncontrollably, but the man beside her, the accomplice, was no longer listening to anything. Enough words, he snarled, pulling a knife from his pocket and pointing it at the millionaire's chest. You've been too lucky until now. Henry took a step back, his gaze fixed on the blade that gleamed in the dim light. Think carefully. This won't erase what you did. He tried to reason, but the man just smiled cruelly. It'll help me sleep better tonight. He advanced quickly like a predator. The sound of the struggle spread throughout the house. Henry tried to dodge, pushed a chair, but was grazed on the arm. Claire, help me, he cried, his voice cutting through the air. She recoiled, her eyes full of terror, unable to move. Blood began to seep from his shirt sleeve. "You shouldn't have come back," the aggressor shouted, trying to reach him again. Outside, Alice heard the noise and jumped up. "We can't let them kill him, Leo." The boy was breathing fast, his body trembling. "What if he hurts us?" She looked at him firmly, her eyes full of tears but charged with courage. "I won't let that happen." Without thinking, Alice pushed the door with her shoulder until it gave way. "No!" Claire cried, but it was too late. The children burst into the room. The man, surprised, turned his head, and that second of distraction was all Henry needed. "Get out of here!" he shouted. But Alice ran towards the aggressor, launched herself onto his back, and tried to snatch the knife from his hand. "Let go of it!" she screamed with all her might. Leo did the same, grabbing the man's arm and biting his wrist. The knife fell to the floor, sliding to Henry's feet. Bloody, he took the opportunity to get up and run towards the window. In a desperate leap, he broke the glass and threw himself outside, rolling onto the patio ground. The sound of the impact echoed like an explosion in the night. Claire screamed his name, running after him, while the accomplice stumbled furiously, trying to free himself from the children. "I'm going to kill you both!" he roared. But Alice pushed him with all her strength, making him hit the wall. Claire tugged his arm. "Let's go! The police might be coming!" The two rushed out the back door, panting, chasing the injured millionaire who limped towards the gate. The moon illuminated the patio like a farewell stage, and then sirens cut through the air. The sound of police cars approached in waves, with red and blue lights reflecting in the house windows. Henry fell to his knees in the middle of the patio, exhausted, while Claire and the accomplice stopped, blinded by the headlights. "Police! Drop your weapons!" a firm voice shouted. In seconds, armed officers surrounded the place. The accomplice tried to run, but was subdued with a blow. Claire stood motionless, her arms raised, her face covered in tears. Alice and Leo watched everything from the veranda, embracing, trembling between fear and relief. Their hearts still beat like frantic drums. Claire looked at her daughter one last time, her face devastated. "Alice, forgive me," the girl cried, her chest heaving. "Mum, why? Why did you do all of this?" The woman didn't answer, only lowered her head as the police handcuffed her. Henry, his shoulder bloody, approached slowly and put a hand on the girl's head. "It's over," he whispered, gasping. "You saved our lives." The patrol car lights reflected in Alice's tears as she watched her mother being taken away. Her weeping filled the air, a pure, broken sound that mixed pain, relief, and the cruel certainty that nothing would ever be the same. As the police took Claire and the accomplice away, Alice remained silent, staring into nothingness. The night wind moved her hair, and the distant sound of sirens faded little by little. Henry knelt in front of her, and Leo, exhausted, embracing them both at the same time. "You were the light in the midst of darkness," he said, his voice choked. "Without you, I would never have found my son." Alice sobbed, too weak to respond. That night, amidst ruins and tears, the innocent love of two children had faced evil and overcome it. The following days dawned more silently. The house where everything had happened was now empty, surrounded only by the memory of the screams and the rain that had fallen that night. Henry took Alice and Leo to the stately home, and for the first time in a long time, that place had the sound of life again. Windows were opened, fresh air came in, and sunlight seemed to cleanse the shadows of the past. Alice looked at everything with a lost gaze, not knowing where she belonged. "It's too big for me here," she murmured, sitting on the sofa. Henry smiled, knelt in front of her, and said, "A home isn't measured by its size, little one. It's measured by love, and you brought love back to this house." Henry's wounds healed slowly, but his heart began to mend faster. Leo never left Alice's side. They played together in the garden like siblings reunited after a war. Sometimes silence filled the place, and the girl stood still, looking at the sky, remembering her mother. Henry observed her from afar with tenderness. "You miss her, don't you?" he asked once, sitting beside her on the swing. "Yes, despite everything that happened," he nodded. "A daughter's love isn't easily erased, but sometimes loving is also forgiving what you don't understand." Alice rested her head on his shoulder without saying anything. That gesture was enough. News traveled fast. Claire had been convicted, and the accomplice imprisoned for a long list of crimes. Alice heard the verdict in silence. When Henry hung up the phone, she only asked, "Will she be okay?" He hesitated before replying. "She will pay for what she did, but perhaps in the end, she'll find peace." That same day, official confirmation arrived. Claire had lost custody of her daughter forever. Alice remained silent for a moment, her gaze distant, then whispered, "I just want her to know I still love her." Henry felt a lump in his throat and hugged her tightly. "And that's why you are special, because even hurt, you still know how to love." Those words hung in the air like a promise of rebirth. Days turned into weeks, and life took on a different rhythm. Leo smiled again. Alice discovered what it felt like to feel safe, and Henry, for the first time, felt that time was no longer his enemy. One golden morning, he received a call from social services. "Provisional custody of the child has been granted to you," said the voice on the other end. He remained silent for a moment, moved. Then he took a deep breath and replied, "She was already part of my family before that." When he hung up, he looked out the window and saw Alice and Leo playing among the flowers. A genuine smile appeared on his face, a smile the world hadn't seen in a year. In the afternoon, he called Alice to talk. She arrived shyly, wiping her hands on her dress. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked, scared. Henry laughed, shaking his head. "On the contrary, you did everything right." He took her hands and looked her in the eyes. "Alice, I've thought about it a lot, and if you want to, I would like you to be my daughter." The silence that followed was broken only by the singing of birds in the garden. The girl gasped, her eyes full of tears. "Your daughter?" she repeated, almost disbelieving. "Yes, truly." Henry smiled, his voice choked. "You taught me that family is who chooses to love you, and today, I choose you." Tears streamed down Alice's face, and she threw herself into his arms, crying, "I choose you too, Dad." The sound of those words made the world stop for an instant. Leo ran towards them, hugging both of them, and the three stood there united, as if time had finally stopped hurting. The wind blew softly, rustling the garden leaves, and the high sun in the sky illuminated the new life being born between them. No wealth, no luxury, no fortune would ever hold as much value as that moment. Henry looked at them and thought, "Pain destroyed me, but a little girl's love rebuilt me." Months later, during the adoption ceremony, the judge asked Alice, "Do you want to keep your surname, or would you like to change it?" She looked at Henry and Leo and replied with a radiant smile, "I want to have the same one as them." And when the document was signed, a new chapter began. Not of pain, but of redemption. Henry lifted his daughter into his arms and said, "Now we are a complete family." The girl hugged him tightly while Leo laughed, spinning around them. And for the first time since the day everything fell apart, Henry felt peace in his heart, because in the end, he discovered that the deepest miracles don't come from heaven, but from a child's love.